Thanks, One Church. Thank you, Pastor Greg. Thankful is the word that comes to mind when I think about these past 5 years and all that my wife, Kala, and I have seen God do, and his hand upon this church, and being able to be a small part in it, serving and being a part of what God is doing in the lives of all the people here. So thankful, and so thankful to have a truly great friend and leader like Pastor Greg. I mean, even in the midst of transition and going through this over these past 3 months, Greg has been a continued support, leader, and a great friend to me, to my wife, and to my family. So I'm thankful. And thankful to be up here today talking to you in the midst of this series we're in called Clear the Stage. Because I do think what my wife and I have been really processing through and thinking through fits really well with this idea of clearing the stage. And when I think of clear the stage, I think of removing obstacles. Removing obstacles to hear the voice of God, to listen to the voice of God. And that's all that any of us really want, right? We're trying to listen to him. We're trying to hear the plans he has for your life, trying to hear the plans that he has in front of you. And you just want to do what he wants you to do, right? And sometimes it can be really, really hard to hear him. And really hard to feel confident in what that is, right? It's easy to get a little nervous, like, I'm gonna mess this up. Like, there's a gap there. And when I think about all this and think about all the obstacles and the noise we're trying to remove, there's a lot of noise in your life. There's a lot of noise in your life. I want you to go with me here for a second and just think about all the noise in your life. You got your Twitter, you got your Instagram, you got your Facebook, you got your messages, you got your voicemail that you've left unlistened to because you're like, man, I really got to remember to call my mom back. I love her, but man, I got to get back to that. Like you got your mail like blowing up in your email. Maybe you're one of those people, and listen, I love you. I just don't know how you do this, where you have like literally 4,023, like with that red circle. Like, how do you do that? Let's just stop. Let's just take a quick break. If you're those folks, can you just tell me how you do that? Like, what is all, you got all this noise, you got all these voices, right? You got your neighbor. Maybe you got a neighbor to your right, a neighbor to your left, a neighbor behind you. Maybe you got a neighbor upstairs and a neighbor downstairs. Maybe you got a best friend, a spouse, a soon-to-be spouse, a mom, a dad, a mom-in-law, a dad-in-law, a stepdad, a stepmom, a boss, a leader. Maybe you got the credit card company calling you and saying, hey, are you going to go ahead and pay this invoice? Or maybe you just keep driving down that same street on your commute and you keep seeing that guy with the sign who's dancing and you don't quite know what he's listening to, but you're kind of curious, and he keeps waving that sign. It's 50% off of something, but I don't know what it is. There's just noise, 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 noise. Like, how do you hear anything in the midst of noise? You can't hear anything. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to clear the stage. We're trying to remove obstacles, get some of the noise out of our way so that we can focus and hear the voice of God. Our son Chambers is about to turn 5, and he's been taking Taekwondo lessons. And if you want to see something that is like the cutest thing ever, see a bunch of 4- and 5-year-old girls and boys learning Taekwondo. I mean, it's amazing. They do such a great job too, like really getting these kids engaged. And one of the things they do before every class that I love is they kind of circle them up for a little lesson. And they get them all in a circle, sitting Indian style, and the master will teach them something. And they've done this one a couple of times, and I'm really thankful because our son could use some help with this, which is on focus. And they talk about there are 3 kinds of focus. So they're all huddled up. 3 kinds of focus. There's eye focus. So when the master is speaking, you look at the master. Then there's mind focus, mind focus. So when I say hamburgers, what are you thinking about? Hamburgers, good, okay. Then there's body focus. You turn your body towards the master. And when we engage in our exercises, you're turning your body towards the master. So you ready to be focused? Eye focus, mind focus, body focus. Yeah. They're all jacked, you know. And I find myself a little jealous of my son because his master, his sensei, is eye to eye with him, talking to him. And my sensei, my heavenly father, my heavenly master, I don't really feel like I get to be eye to eye with him. I don't really feel like I get to hear his voice directly. You know, I get lost in the struggle, and all I want to do is be focused. All I want is my eyes to be focused on him, my mind to be focused on him, my body, my soul, my heart to be nothing but focused on him. But it sure feels like I'm going to miss it sometimes because there's a big gap there. And I think a lot of our stress when it comes down to listening to the voice of God comes down to these two words: the margin for error. And the margin for error when you're listening to God feels massive. This massive gap between God's heavenly voice and your earthly ears, God's heavenly call and your earthly mind, and all the distraction and all the noise. And was that God speaking, or is that Taco Bell? Because Taco Bell has a feeling, y'all. It's got a real feeling. So I don't know what this is going on right now, but I feel something. How do I make sure I don't mess up this? How do I make sure I don't mess up the margin for error when it comes to listening to God? We're going to learn some tips on this today from the Old Testament. So if you have your Bibles or your Bible app, you can go to 1 Samuel chapter 3. Go ahead and pull that out, 1 Samuel chapter 3. While you're getting that ready, and you can follow on the screen here in a minute too, I want to give you a little bit of context. We're going to look at the life of Samuel. And the man that Samuel becomes is the first prophet of Israel. He's a kingmaker. He's one of the most important characters in the story of Israel and the story of the Old Testament. He's woven through the whole thing, really leading and changing and listening to God. But before he becomes that man, he's a boy working in the temple. And that's where we're going to pick up with Samuel. We're actually going to go back a little bit further to where his story begins, which is where every single person who's ever lived story begins, which is with their mom. Samuel's mom was unable to conceive for many years. So Samuel's mom, before Sam was born, was praying year after year after year for a son, and God was not answering her prayer, continuing to pray. In that time, because of the nature of the time, it was not uncommon for there to be another wife brought into the picture, because it was common for, heirs and family to be so important that if that was happening, they would marry another wife. And so what you have entered into the picture now is some dysfunction, even before Samuel's on the scene. So Samuel's stepmom is able to conceive, having sons and daughters, and Samuel's stepmom is taunting Samuel's soon-to-be biological mom about her inability to conceive, rubbing it in her face this whole time, antagonizing her. So before Samuel's even born, he's got dysfunction. So then Samuel's mom's prayer is answered and Samuel's born. And as a response to this blessing from God, she makes a decision to dedicate Samuel back to the Lord. And that's actually the verse we use when we do child dedications, comes from this story. She prayed for years. God answered her prayer. She dedicated Samuel back to the Lord. And when he's born, she does this emotionally, she does this spiritually. But when he's 5 years old, she physically dedicates him to the Lord's work by sending him to the tabernacle to learn the Lord's work alongside the priest of the village, and get connected that way. And you would think that the dysfunction in his family life and the strangeness of his family life would get better when he moved his world to the temple, but it somehow gets worse and stranger. So he goes into the temple and he's serving alongside this old priest who's going blind, the super passive leader who has two sons who are way older than Samuel. So they should be like people Samuel can look up to, but they're, I'm trying to think of the nicest way to say it, they're scumbags. Awful. They are stealing meat from the sacrifices. They're sleeping with women who are coming into the temple to pray. It's awful. And Eli, this passive priest and dad, isn't doing anything about it. They keep doing stuff, and the town hates these guys. And Eli just keeps going to him and just saying, boys, what are you guys doing? You got to stop this. And it's like, dude, come on, do something about it, So Samuel's in all this dysfunction. He's in this dysfunction from his home life he's still connected to. He's got dysfunction in his work life. And he's got a lot of noise. And in the midst of that, I got to imagine Samuel felt pretty alone. Have you ever gone to a party where you didn't know anybody? Maybe with your close friends, you're the life of the party. you're cutting up, you're starting the dance circle with your friends. Don't hate on my moves. There's no music playing right now, all right? But when you go to like a party where you don't know anyone, you're like, how did I get here? These people are weird. I feel like that's a little bit of like where Samuel's at. Like, how did I get here, man? Like, my mom sent me off to the temple. I got all this priest, these older sons, like, but Samuel in the midst of that is still obedient, still serving well. The town loves him. And this is where we're picking up in chapter 3. He's 12 years old, and he's hearing the voice of God for the first time. So I'm going to read a good chunk of text here, so stick with me, follow along as we learn here from Samuel. It says this, meanwhile, the boy Samuel served the Lord by assisting Eli. Now, in those days, messages from the Lord were very rare, and visions were quite uncommon. One night, Eli, who was almost blind by now, had gone to bed. The lamp of God had not yet gone out, and Samuel was sleeping in the tabernacle near the ark of God. Suddenly, the Lord called out, Samuel. Yes, Samuel replied. What is it? He got up and ran to Eli. Here I am. Did you call me? I didn't call you, Eli replied. Go back to bed. So he did. Then the Lord called out again, Samuel. Again, Samuel got up, went to Eli. Here I am. Did you call me? I didn't call you, my son. Eli said, go back to bed. Samuel did not yet know the Lord because he had never had a message from the Lord before. So the Lord called a third time, and once more Samuel got up and went to Eli. Here I am. Did you call me? Then Eli realized it was the Lord calling the boy. So he said to Samuel, go and lie down again, and if someone calls again, say, speak, Lord, your servant is listening. So Samuel went back to bed. The Lord came and called as before, Samuel, Samuel. And Samuel replied, speak, your servant is listening. Speak, your servant is listening. Speak, your servant is listening. If you don't remember anything else I say today, take that with you today. Take that response with you today. Simply that, speak, Lord, your servant is listening. I think it's amazing how in the midst of all the dysfunction and all the noise that God still finds a way to speak. It's a dysfunctional world we're in. You have some dysfunction around you, I'm quite sure, because we're imperfect people in imperfect places. But God can still speak in the midst of dysfunction. God can still find a way to speak to you in the midst of the dysfunction. And whatever environment you're in, God is speaking to you in the midst of it. Can we just take a quick minute to appreciate Samuel here? Can you think about yourself as a 12-year-old boy or girl? Think about yourself when you were 12. If you got woken up in the middle of the night by someone you were working for all day, like maybe your mom and dad called you, he like gets up and he's like, yeah, Eli, what's up, man? Like if I was 12, like 12-year-old me, you wake me up in the middle of the night, I'm gonna pretend I didn't hear you. Like, no, I'm going back to sleep. And then waking up in the morning, Eli was like, yeah, I was calling you. Like, oh, man, you were calling me? Like, oh, I didn't even hear you, man. Like, silence that phone call. Like, oh, dude, sorry. Like, just try again tonight, I guess. I don't know. But like, that's like the kid this Samuel is. He's a great kid. So obedient, so willing, so ready to just jump in and listen. And we learn a lot from Samuel, but we also learn a lot here from Eli on how to listen, how to prepare ourselves to respond to the work of God. So when Samuel goes to Eli in the middle of the night, Eli tells him, hey, try this. And the first thing he says is go and lie down again. So the first thing for us on how we can listen to God is to ready yourself. Ready yourself. He says, go and lie down again. Go and lie down again. Sometimes that actually means literally lying down, and I found myself thinking about times when I have literally myself been lying down. And there were times in this season where after the kids go to sleep, and for the parents in the room, you know that's when you get your time back. So the kids are asleep, and I would sneak into our bed and lie down and close my eyes and just breathe. And I never heard an audible voice from God. I don't know if you have. Samuel did. But even still, just trying to create space. And I don't know what your version is of going and lying down, but you need to find your version. Maybe it is literally going and lying down. Maybe it's going on a walk. Maybe it's just for one time this week, you put your phone somewhere else. Like just take your phone and actually put it in another room. I'm not saying in your pocket, because then it's like, yes, okay, this is great. Yeah, okay, 1 second, ready for the break, and now. Okay, good. Okay, 1 second, yep, no, I'm listening. No, what did you, okay, yep, nope, 1 second. Twitter response, can't believe you said that. Elon Musk, send, okay. Break, okay. No, actually put your phone in the other room for 10 minutes. Try it this week. And try not to think about it. I challenge you to 30 minutes. Some of you guys are like, you're checking your phone right now. You're just I have to just check. The times I put my phone in the other room, it takes some detox time. Our bodies are not designed for this amount of input, y'all. You wonder how our world is so anxious and lonely and depressed? Start with the blue light coming from your phone. Input, 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 input. It's not what our minds or eyes are designed for. So take a break from it. Go and lie down again. Ready yourself. You can't hear anything if you're speaking the whole time. Listen, I don't know how to say it another way, but sometimes you gotta shut up. And I don't mean shut up in a way that you're just waiting for your turn to talk. I mean actually shut up and listen. And I'm talking to myself here. My wife will tell you, I'm a talker. I talk a lot. I'm an external processor. But a way that you can show people around you that you love is to develop the skill of listening. It's a skill you can develop. And in this world where we are all so emboldened, and my opinion is what the world needs. I'm here. That sometimes you just need to take a break. And if it helps, literally bite your lip. Just listen. And the same is true for God. It's a skill you can develop, but you have to put yourself in a situation where you can. You have to put yourself in an environment. Go and lie down again. Separate yourself physically from the noise so that you can hear. God speaks in the silence. Notice that God speaks to Samuel in the middle of the night. Have you ever woken up at 3 a.m. and all you can hear is the crickets and the leaves rustling? That's where God speaks to Samuel. It says in Scripture that God has a still, small voice. Our God is a powerful God, but he's a gentle God too. And he's a gentle man. He will wait for you. He will speak to you in a still, soft, quiet voice. That still voice can't make it through noise. You have to ready yourself. Go and lie down again. Create space. The second we learn here is Samuel's response, which is to humble ourselves. Humble yourself. I love how Pastor Greg last week, preaching about humility, connected it to teachability. Teachability. How teachable are you? How willing are you actually to accept that your first draft might not be your last draft? Again, I'm preaching to myself here. I'm the kind of guy that when an idea comes out, I think it's the right one. It's done. I'm just this is the idea. You have to be teachable. You have to be willing to take a step back, even if you love the idea, to humble yourself and be teachable. Are you willing to accept that your idea might not be the best idea? Are you willing to accept that your plan that you have been working on might not be the final plan and that God might have something to say in the mix? I think some of us have to be willing and ready to let some of our plans die. Let go of some of your plans. I know you worked on them. I know you worked on them for a long time. I know you worked on that business plan. I know you've been working on it for years. I know you've been working on that creative project. I know you've been working on that relationship. Some of y'all need to break up with a plan. I'll say that again just real quick, just to make sure the people in the back heard. Some of y'all need to break up with that plan. Some of y'all need to leave that plan. Some of you need to be patient with the plan. Maybe it just needs some more time to grow. It says, many are the plans of man, but it's God's purpose that prevails. You're gonna have lots and lots of plans. And because you are gonna have lots and lots of plans, that's great. That's part of who you are. That's part of life. That's part of living. Keep making plans. Keep working. Just don't get committed to them. Don't get too stuck on them, because you're gonna have lots of plans. It says many are the plans of man, but it's God's purpose that prevails. So it's not about whether or not you make plans. It's about how obsessed are you with the plan that you're on right now. You might just be on plan C, but God's waiting for you to get to plan K. And you gotta keep on going, you gotta keep going. And part of that means you either have to grieve a plan or be patient enough to let it grow. And I'm not saying it's easy, it's hard. It's hard to grieve plans. But we have to choose to be committed to a voice over committed to a plan. Be committed to God's purpose for your life over a plan that you have conceived. So many times we just work so hard on just like making a proposal for God, and then we want him to stamp it. And we're like, all right, God, I've got the plan for you. I've been working on it. Step 1 through 5, you're gonna love it. I know you're God, but you've never seen anything like this. You're gonna love it. Here we go. Get the PowerPoint out. Go ahead and put it up. I've been working on it for years now. God, will you bless it? Like, we gotta just, it's good to do that. Like, we gotta work on something, but can't be committed to it. Have to be willing to grieve plans. I've learned that you grieve plans. That's not something I knew that you did, but you do grieve plans because we get attached. We're emotional. We get excited about stuff. You know, when Calla and I moved here and we were in Nashville, we were excited about what God was leading us to, but I don't think we realized that we were gonna have to grieve some plans. We had to grieve some plans. We had plans in Nashville, career ideas and family plans, and we loved the city and all this stuff, and we had to grieve that. And we were so excited about what was ahead that we forgot that we had other plans that we were grieving. But in the midst of that, God has done incredible things. And right now we're in a season where we're transitioning on to what's next, and we're still kind of grieving what's behind. Prepare yourself for grieving your plans and accept that that's okay. Focus on it and allow yourself to actually look at how you're feeling about it and process it so that God can move you on to the next step. But we do have to move on because we're not committed to a plan. We're committed to a voice. And you have to be intentional with the voices that you listen to. Decide right now that everybody can speak to you, but not everyone can speak into you. There's a lot of voices. Everybody can speak to you, but not everybody can speak into you. That's a decision you have to make right now. I'm telling you, God is going to call you to things that do not make sense. And if you listen to the voices around you that are not like Eli was in Samuel's life, someone that you can trust that knows the voice of God, you're gonna get distracted. You're gonna get confused. Every single season in my life I've been in, I've had people that spoke into me that weren't ultimately right about what I felt like God was calling me to, and people who were. You have to be intentional with what voices you listen to. Because they will speak and it will be confusing, but you do need those people in your life that you can trust, that are like Eli and Samuel in the middle of the night, and Eli goes, oh, bro, that's God. You need that person. You need those people in your life. Here's the other amazing thing about God's voice. I love this. Don't miss this. God speaks to Samuel before Samuel knows God. Did you catch that? God speaks to Samuel before Samuel knew the voice of God. So maybe you don't know the voice of God today, but you feel like he's speaking to you. Maybe you've been on a hiatus from speaking to God. You know what's cool? God kept speaking to Samuel, even though he kept getting it wrong. He didn't just give him one chance and then he's like, oh, he didn't know it was my voice. I guess I'm done. He kept speaking to him. I think he probably would have kept on going. We only saw 3 times because Eli was wise enough to say, oh, I think that's God's voice. But who knows? It could have been 10 times. God's going to keep speaking to you. God's going to keep speaking to you. Are you listening? Are you ready to hear? Because God's not going to give up on you. God's going to keep on speaking. Even when you don't know his voice, he's going to keep on speaking to you. Even when you don't feel like he's close, even when you don't feel like he's speaking to you, he is speaking to you. I believe that right now, God is speaking to people that don't know the sound of his voice, and they're starting to determine where does it fit in this whole thing. But I do believe that God is speaking to you. I want you to know that you can let your plans die. You can let go of those plans. But guess who loves you and loves your passions just as much as you? God does. So when it talks about the purposes of your life prevailing, God knows your purpose. God knows your dreams. God knows your passions. You can trust him with them. So you can let your plans die, your imperfect humanly plans die, and trust them to God, because his purpose will prevail. And part of his purpose for your life is that you're in the midst of your dream. You're in the midst of your passion. You're doing what you were designed to do. Guess who wants you to do what you were designed to do more than you? The designer. The designer wants you to do more than you want to do, because he designed you. He wants to see that come to fruition, but you have to let go. If you love something, let it go. If you love a plan, let it go. If you love a dream, let it go. Put it in his hands. His hands are way more trustworthy than yours. His hands are more trustworthy than yours. But the first step is to let a plan go and to grieve it, and to grieve it with him. But I'm telling you that at some point it's going to be time to move. It's going to be time to take a step. It's going to be time to stand up and say, "Speak, Lord, your servant is listening." And you're going to have to be courageous. I have never been 100% sure of any decision I've ever made. 50, 80, maybe 99, but you can't be 100% sure. You stop waiting for 100%. You will never get to 100%. It's always faith. It takes faith to stand still too, friend. So at some point, you got to just decide, am I going to stand still, and my step of faith is to not do anything? That could be what God is calling you to do, but if he's calling you to move, it's time to take a courageous step. Faith is something you cannot see. Faith is something that you're hoping for. Faith is taking a step when you don't know if there's something there to land on, and hoping that there is, and trusting God in the whole thing, and positioning your heart towards obedience, and knowing that if I'm obedient, God is not going to fault me for that. God is a faithful God. Samuel heard the voice of God thousands of years ago. Guess how many times he's spoken since then to you, or to his people, all the way up to speaking to you today? Think about that. Our God has been faithful for thousands of years. For eternity, he's been faithful. Don't you think he's going to be faithful for your years? So you can take a step of faith because you're trusting in a faithful God that's going to continue to deliver for you time and time again, and knowing that you will not be 100%. But when you feel that voice, to be courageous, take a step. Be prepared for the fact that he is going to speak to you. I think a lot of our stress when it comes to hearing the voice of God comes down to something else that Eli says actually to him. In the middle of the night, he says, "And if someone calls again." If someone calls again. And we get stuck on this word if. What if I fail? What if I look stupid? What if I drop the ball? What if I miss the plan? What if I don't think you can mess it up. If you're honestly pursuing God, you're looking to live a life that's honoring to him, and your sincere posture is, "Speak, Lord, your servant is listening," and your pursuit is obedience, I don't think God penalizes you when you turn left when you should have turned right. I don't think that's how it works, because I think the goal is not your plans. The goal is the posture of your heart. I want to set you free from if today. I want God to set you free from what if today. Because you can obsess all day and night about what if, and it isn't going to change anything about what is going to happen. Stop obsessing about what if. Put that in the hands of God himself. And know this, it's not if he calls again, he is calling you again, time and time and time and time and time and time and time again. You cannot miss it. You can't mess it up. So start taking steps of faith and be emboldened with the power of the same Spirit that raised Jesus from the dead inside of you, pushing you forward, leading you forward. You're not alone. You're not taking steps of faith alone. You're taking steps of faith with a holy, mighty, powerful, awesome, loving God that says, don't worry about what if. I'll take care of that. I have a purpose for your life. So what I believe is in the gap of the margin for error is God's grace. God's grace fills your margin for error. It says grace in place of grace. Grace in place of grace, in place of grace, in place of grace. You might fumble. You might make some missteps. Keep going. You might fall down. You might trip. You might mess it up a little bit. But guess what? Keep on going because you're not perfect. You are going to make mistakes. But if your posture is speak, Lord, your servant is listening, and I'm going to take a step and do my God's honest best to follow what you have in front of me, grace in place of grace. Grace in place of grace already given. He already gave it to you. He's already speaking to you. Are you listening? Are you not listening? Guess what? He's going to keep on speaking to you in the middle of your night, in the middle of your pain, in the middle of your fear, in the middle of your what if, in the middle of your anxiety. He's going to continue to speak to you. He's going to continue to call you to bigger, to better, to greater things, because that is the purpose that God has for your life. His purpose for your life is bigger than your plans. His purpose for your life is bigger than your plans. You can't keep up with God. You can't keep up with God's plans for your life. So let go of your plans and start attaching your heart to His plans, because His plans for your life are connected to your true purpose and your true design and His true love for you. He loves you. He wants you to live your life in purpose and on purpose. I'll invite you to stand. We're going to close in a time of worship. And while we're in this time, if you're comfortable, if you're not, please feel no pressure. If you're comfortable, we're singing this last song, I want to invite you to put your hands out like this. And while we're singing this song about being available, I want you to imagine that the plans that you have for your life, all the steps you've been designing, are in your hands. And as we sing this song, that you begin to go through the journey of giving those back to the Lord. Let go of your plans. Let go of your plans. And let's say together, speak, Lord, your servant is listening, as we sing. Let's worship.